Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to those in attendance at the remote meeting of the local review body of Aberdeen City Council. Please note that the meeting will be recorded and published online for public access after the meeting. You're also reminded to note that we may have members of the public or press observing today's proceedings. Can I ask those who are observing today's meeting to keep their microphones and cameras switched off throughout the meeting? Can members of the local review body leave their cameras on but mute their microphone when not speaking? As the local review body contains quasi-judicial business, members are reminded that they should not leave the meeting during consideration of any of the reviews. This meeting has been convened in response to One Time's request for a review of the decision taken by the appointed officer under the Council scheme of delegation. Members of the local review body have before them copies of the review documents as listed in the notice calling the meeting. When I ask Mr Masson, the Assistant Clerk, to outline the procedure to be followed in the conduct of these review and take a roll call of all members present.
Thank you. Members have the procedure note which was circulated with the meeting papers and is intended to set out the wider framework within which the review process operates. The first task for the review body is to come to a decision on whether the review documents contain sufficient information for the case to be determined without further procedure, and by that it is meant without further information or representations. The regulations governing the local review process require that all matters which the applicant intends to raise in the review must be set out in or accompany the notice of review. The focus of the review should be on the basis of what was before the appointed officer when a decision was made, and only in exceptional circumstances will new or additional matters be permitted to be taken into account. The circumstances in which additional matters can be taken into account are set out in the legislation and will be addressed by the LRB's advisors where relevant. This review should take the form of a structured discussion led by the chairperson to consider the matter set out in the notice of review before you, and I would conclude by drawing your attention in particular to points 10 to 12 of the procedure note. So I can see that we have Councillor McRae in attendance and he will be chairing the meeting, and I can also see Councillors Bolton, Clark and Councillor Houghton, who is subbing for Councillor Facker today. Hand over back to you, Councillor McRae.
Thank you very much. So turn to consideration of today's review in respect of the decision to refuse the application for the installation of replacement double garage with carport and alterations to a boundary wall to the rear of 38 Carden Place, Aberdeen, AB 101UP. Planning reference is 250631. We'll now hear from the planning advisor in attendance, Ms Lucy Green, who will provide us with a brief description of the application proposal and a reminder of the reasons why the application was refused. I point out today that Ms Green's attendance to this meeting is to provide us with the necessary professional planning guidance because she has not been involved in the earlier consideration of the application under review. Ms Green will not, however, be asked to express any view on the merits of the proposed development, and in effect her role will be a neutral one involving the provision of factual information and guidance only. Ms Green, over to you.
Thank you, convener. Morning, members. I'll just share my presentation. So this request for review has been submitted with all the necessary information within the time limit, and the applicant has indicated on the notice of review that there are no new matters been raised in the submissions. In terms of procedure, the applicant has expressed the view that the case shouldn't proceed without a site visit to understand the context and view surrounding garages. So I'll carry on and provide some background information before handing back to you, convener, for members to discuss and decide how to proceed. So this is the site location plan. The application site is the curtilage of a 2.5-storey granite semi-detached house fronting onto Carden Place and backing onto Albert Lane here. And it's within the Albine Place and Rubislaw Conservation Area. And this is the site plan showing the existing garage there at the back on Albert Lane. The building was originally built as a house and converted fairly recently from office use, and that's ongoing. To the rear, the garden is mainly hard surfaced with areas of planting, and there's a condition on the previous and recent planning permission, which involves landscaping the rear and front gardens. The existing garage is a blockwork, brickwork structure with a corrugated roof, and I'll show a photograph of it in a minute. This application would remove the garage and involve building a new garage and carport, which would together extend across the width of the plot. So some images from Google. This one's taken from the rear, so the north, showing the building being converted into a house and the existing garage there, the lane, etc. And taken from the other direction, just showing the garage there. And this is a Google Street View image from Albert Lane showing the existing garage and looking down the garden there. And then I've added this one in, it's not in the presentation, it's just from Google Street View again, looking down the lane, and this is the existing garage. Just there. The drawings of the existing garage, and these show that it's just over 5 meters wide and just under 7 meters long, 3.8 meters total height, with the eaves shown as 2.26 meters. And this slide compares the existing and proposed schemes. So I'll show you the proposed plan in more detail on the next slide, but the proposed garage extends the site across the site, which would be 9.4 meters wide, 8 meters in length, and set back 1.5 meters into the plot. And the report makes the point that this is a wider plot than many on the opposite side of the lane. So I've just split the site plan into two here, just to show it a bit larger. So this is the garage and carport here, and the garage would be on this side. I'll show you the floor plan in a moment, with the carport on this side. So it'd be set back. This is a setback from the lane. Boundary walls would be retained with later additions of brick and render removed to make good the original granite wall, and there would be a brick soldier course put back on. You can see that the proposals for the garden are included there as well. And this is showing the north and south elevations of the garage. So this would be the view from within the garden. And this is it's a monopitch roof, so this is the lower edge at the south end within the garden. And then the higher edge onto the lane. And you can see the solar panels there on top of the roof. And these are the gates into the carport and black UPVC gates into the garage. So the roof would be a monopitch. And the wider gates, which are 5.2 meters, are black UPVC, and the gates to the carport, 3.3 meters wide, and would be timber linings together with the rest of the elevation. And then side elevations there. That's obviously the carport. You wouldn't actually see that full opening because the granite wall is in front of it, the plot boundary wall. So this is the lane just here, and the setback from the lane. And then on the other side, the boundary wall and the elevation of the garage. You can see the materials noted there: timber linings, black PVC gutters and downpipes, and the proposed floor plan, the garage and the carport there, and this is the lane at the top. And this is just a detail of the wall and how the timber linings would be fixed onto the existing granite wall. And sections through the garage. This one's section is across the middle here. And this one is taken through the length of the garage. And this is an image that was on the drawings. You can just vaguely make out the gates to the carport that are just in there. And this shows the extent of the Albine Place and Rubislaw Conservation Area and the location of the property within it. And the reason for the decision, so the main reason is that the cumulative effect of the length, width, built footprint and the monopitch roof form of the building with its highest point fronting the lane, combined with the exposed siting in the context of the existing character of this section of the lane, would mean that the proposal would adversely affect the character and appearance of the surrounding area. And then it refers to policies on quality homes, the West End area, which is the zoning policy, and the relevant guidance on outbuildings within the Householder Development Guide. And it also states, in terms of the conservation area, the proposed works would be of unsympathetic scale, massing and design. And references policies on historic assets and places and design, as well as the Historic Environment Policy for Scotland and the aims of the Albine Place and Rubislaw Conservation Area Character Appraisal. And further reason is that if the proposal was approved, it could set an unwelcome precedent for similar garages within the conservation area. Also notes that the proposal although the proposal would include solar panels on its roof, which would be to the benefit of climate change, these could be included on an alternatively designed building, so that the benefits in terms of climate change could still be felt, and that aspect of the proposal doesn't outweigh the adverse impact of the development on the character and appearance of the conservation area. So a summary of the applicant's statement of review by the agent states that the applicant is making a significant investment to convert the property to its original use, and including the car park to the garden, which would be landscaped, and then enclosing the lane with the garage. And the garden is being used for construction access, and the landscaping will be carried out once that's finished. It points out that there are garages on Albert Lane, and they are in various forms, finishes and sizes, and there are quite a few photographs been submitted with the review and in the statement. Along the Carden Place side of the lane is more open, as rear gardens have been used for car parking for offices, and the garage would enclose the lane again to the benefit of the conservation area. And also that the existing view is of a rendered blockwork garage with an open view to a former car park. Makes the point also that on the opposite side of the lane, many garages are the full width of the plot, and the length of the proposed garage would not affect the view to the main house. Also makes the point that many garages are set back more than 1 metre, and that many garages are of greater height and a variety of roof forms. A further point is that there's no overshadowing or privacy issues, and that the installation of solar panels is positive. Also, that the garage would result in a positive effect on the conservation area, and the garage would not appear uncomfortable or out of character in this rear lane setting, and further point that the Householder Development Guide is non-statutory and not policy. In terms of consultations, the Roads DM team had no objection. They stated that the size is satisfactory and that the bins would be stored in the garden and taken through the carport for collection, which is acceptable. There were no comments from the Queen's Cross and Harlow Conservation Area, and there was one objection which made several points that the proposed height, which at that time was 4.3 metres, has since been amended. That was the first point. And also that it extends the full width of the plot at that height, which would not be consistent with other garages and would negatively be visually dominating. It would set a precedent for other large garages, which would make the lane secluded and encourage theft and antisocial behaviour. And that the single ply roof would not be consistent with slate and metal on many other garages. So at this point, I'll hand back to members. The applicant's agent has requested a site meeting, but it's for members to decide how to proceed.
Thank you very much. So we now to consider whether we have sufficient information in front of us today to take a decision on the application. Members, reminder, if you do not feel we have sufficient information to take a decision, we can request further written information to be provided, hearings to be arranged, or a site visit to be undertaken. At the moment, I am quite content to continue with the information that we have, but we will go around the room. I'll call Councillor Houghton first.
Thanks, convener. I'm wondering on this occasion, I haven't asked for one before, but whether a site visit might actually be useful. And I say that because a lot of the photos that were included in the presentation from Google Street View are from about 4 or 5 years ago. And I wonder if the fear is that the precedent this is going to set and that we're expecting more of these applications, it might actually be worthwhile going out and having a look, because there's a lot of similar lanes like this. And it might be to the committee's benefit or the LRB's benefit to have an actual understanding of what this looks and feels like. But it's just kind of where I am at the moment.
Okay, not a problem. Councillor Bolton.
Having been on the planning committee for almost 20 years, I've done a number of site visits to the lanes in and around this area, and there is a variety. I do feel that I have got enough information and knowledge of the back lanes. However, I'm happy to go with either of you on this, because I appreciate that it is important that we protect our conservation area, and that's not making any sort of declaration about what I think of the application.
Not a problem. Okay, Councillor Clark.
I feel that I'm satisfied with all the information I've got, because the drawings, etc., are all very good standard. And I used to work in that area, so I know the lane very well. Maybe shouldn't shout that out, but and I know it's an array of different garages. There's not two the same, and I'm quite happy with the information we've got.
Okay, thank you. So I've got myself and Councillor Clark with proceeding, Councillor Bolton on the fence, and Councillor Houghton potentially looking for a site visit. So
I'll come off the fence and just say, I mean, I have got sufficient information. I appreciate where Councillor Houghton's coming from in terms of wanting a better understanding. But I'm comfortable with the information I have currently to make a determination.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm likewise. I'm satisfied I've got enough information. It was just if there was a view that a site visit would be particularly helpful, then I was happy to offer up as a suggestion. But otherwise happy to proceed.
Okay, thank you all. Therefore, as members feel we now have sufficient information, we'll then pass back to Ms. Green, who will take us through the relevant policies and procedures for this review.
Thank you. So I'll move on to the policies. And these are the relevant policies from NPF4, the National Planning Framework. There's also national policy in the form of Historic Environment Policy for Scotland, and the following slides just have a look at those. So these are policies 1 and 2, which require that all development proposals give significant weight to the global climate and nature crises. And policy 2 on climate mitigation and adaptation. Policy 7 on historic assets and places. This states that development proposals affecting conservation areas will only be supported where the character and appearance of the conservation area and its setting is preserved or enhanced, and the relevant considerations include the architectural and historic character of the area, the existing density, built form and layout, and the context and siting, quality of design and suitable materials. And it also states that development proposals in conservation areas will ensure that existing natural and built features which contribute to the character of the area are maintained, and that includes boundary walls. Policy 13 on sustainable transport was also referenced. And it encourages development where developments that prioritise walking, cycling and public transport. I picked out section B, which says that proposals will be supported where transport requirements generated have been considered in line with sustainable travel. And it includes reference to low or zero emission vehicle and cycle charging points. So policy 14 on design. As you know, there are the 6 qualities of successful places, and I've just picked out some of them here. So pleasant, supporting attractive natural and built spaces, and distinctive, which makes reference to local architectural styles and references scale, built form and sense of place. And then the quality that is about adaptability supports commitment to investing in the long-term value of buildings by allowing for flexibility so that they can meet the changing needs and accommodate different uses over time. And then also section C, which states that development proposals that are poorly designed, detrimental to the amenity of the surrounding area, or inconsistent with the 6 qualities will not be supported. And then policy 16 relates to quality homes. And in terms of householder development proposals, these will be supported where they don't have a detrimental impact on the character of the home and the surrounding area in terms of size, design and materials. And they don't have a detrimental impact on neighbouring properties in terms of their physical impact, overshadowing or overlooking. And then this is Historic Environment Scotland's Historic Environment Policy for Scotland. And the main point about these 2 policies that I've picked out is to have an understanding of the historic environment in which the proposal sits, in this case, the conservation area, accepting that some changes are necessary and inevitable, and taking a long-term view. So these are the relevant policies from the local development plan, and the site is zoned under this policy VC6 West End area. And then the relevant planning guidance notes are listed there, and also the conservation area character appraisal. So looking at the zoning policy, it supports the principle of change of use from office to residential, which has already been granted planning permission. And it states that all proposals must respect the special historic and architectural character of the West End. And then policy D1, which is very similar to the policy in NPF4 that I outlined earlier, so I won't go through that in any further detail. Policy 6 on the historic environment seeks to protect the city's historic areas and its historic fabric. And in particular, it says that appropriate developments, including new features and fixings, must be designed to respect the character, appearance and setting of the historic environment and protect the special historic interest of conservation areas. And these are the policies on sustainable travel and parking. In particular, recognising that there will be instances where people will require to travel by car, and it mentions alternative fuel vehicles. And then in inner and outer city areas, in terms of parking, low or no car development will be supported in suitable locations. And also policy references electric vehicle charging. And that is actually conditioned on the change of use planning permission that the property has, and has been included in this proposal as well. This is taken from the Transport and Accessibility Supplementary Guidance, and it states that the design and positioning of the access and garage should be given careful consideration, particularly the effect of the access and garage on safety and the efficiency of the lane. And it's preferred that garages would not be recessed back from the lane. That's from the point of view of the visual impact of containing the lane. However, it notes that where there are visibility issues and on a case-by-case basis, a setback of 1 metre from the curtilage of the property will be acceptable. And it states that in rear lanes, boundary walls built to maintain visibility displays to national standards and garages positioned in the centre of plots are preferred. So from the point of view of the Householder Development Guide, that includes guidance on outbuildings, which this would be considered as. And I've highlighted this section that's relevant here. Outbuildings should not have a negative impact on the character of the surrounding area. And where highly visible, and especially in conservation areas, detached garages should be of a scale and design that respects the prevalent context of the surrounding area. And also that proposals will be assessed on their impact on the amenity of the area in the same way as extensions. This is from the Conservation Area Character Appraisal, and this is in the section B, Queen's Road and the south side of Albine Place. And it points out that a unique feature of the original residential houses was the large garden space, and these areas have now been developed into rear car parking or additional office space. And this has eroded a large part of the original green space within the area. In terms of the roads section, it states that rear lanes, Albert Lane and Albine Lane, are dominated by car parking, and the boundary walls are high stone rubble, with large sections of the boundary walls having been removed to provide access to car parking to the rear. And there are also garage door and outbuildings present in the lane. And then in looking at the features of this section of the conservation area, it says that the back lane high walls in coursed rubble topped with coping stones, that those are part of the character of the area. So overall, determination in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And the basis for the decision in this particular case would be the scale form design of the proposal and the impact on the surrounding area, which is a conservation area, the impact on residential amenity, and also consideration from the point of view of parking and accessibility. So does the proposal comply with the development plan as a whole, or are there material considerations weighing for or against the proposal? And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Councillor Bolton?
Yeah, can I just double check the new height of the garage roof? Because I know it was reduced and I've got 3 figures written down and I can't remember which one was which. It's just the same me going back into the report.
Let me just go back to the drawing to double check. I'll just share that again. So share them. Yeah, so the ridge 3.596 meters. Well, it says ridge, the high point of the roof, and then at the low point of the roof, 2.9 meters.
And was the original garage there? I've written down 3.8. Is that correct? The one that's getting demolished or being proposed to be demolished.
Just check. Yes, 3.8 total height to the ridge. Doesn't actually show it on the drawing, but yeah. 3.8.
Okay. And the difference in length was 7 meters long. It was shorter. The new one. I've got 2.9, but
just one moment. I think it's longer, but just.
So I know it's wider, but obviously because it takes.
Yeah, and that drawing shows the 2. But let me just check the 8 meters in length. It's 9.4 wide.
So it's a meter. That's what's written. And the difference in the width was.
The proposed is 9.4 meters wide, and I think the other one's just under 5 meters. It's
okay. No, that's fine. I just had a load of figures written down, and I had current, new, and changed. So I was trying to remember which way round it was. So thank you. That's fine. Thanks.
Not a problem. Any further questions, members? Councillor Houghton?
Thanks, Kevin. It was just one question. In the reasons for refusal, there was discussion about this setting a precedent for future ones. I'd understood we were always to take planning applications on their own individual merits, and we're not to look to other decisions of planning. Can I just understand what the interplay of that is here? Because I'm just concerned about the message we're kind of sending to potential applicants.
Yes, I mean, obviously there's the issue of being consistent, but where you would look at the different merits of the particular plot. So the report notes that on the north side of the lane, for example, there's almost a continual row of garages, so that you wouldn't notice the length so much. There might be trees or high boundary walls on particular plots that would be relevant. So you would be looking at the differences, but obviously also with a mind to being consistent in decisions.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from anyone? Not seeing any hands. Okay, so in accordance with procedural notes circulated, the local review body will now discuss and decide the manner in which the review is to proceed. I would highlight that all representations relating to the case have been considered and taken into account. Determination, members. Before I bring in Councillor Bolton, I can see you're jumping to command. Where I currently am on this one, MPF 4 in terms of policy 1 and 2 and climate, I'm not too concerned about that one. Obviously, we're building in a carport in relation to EV charging point and PV panels on the roof. Policy 7, historic assets and places in the character, knowing Albert Lane and the varied uses and types of garages down there. I'm not too concerned that this is going to be majorly out of place, especially on the north side of the lane. There does seem to be a number of garages that are very similar in presentation, are set 1 metre back to allow for visual lines of getting vehicles out and reversed into carports, and they go the full width of the gardens as well, which ties into policy 14 of design, massing and sightlines. The styles along that lane as well, I feel, are very mixed. A lot of mixes of roof finishes, brickwork, timber and rendering, so therefore I'm not too concerned about that. Policy 16, detrimental impact. I do take into account that the south side of the lane is lighter in the nature of garages. There's not the same amount as there is on the north side, but we are replacing an existing building, although slightly bigger, but obviously the pitch is going to be lower, so I'm not too concerned about the detrimental impact there. Historic Environmental Scotland notes that change is necessary, although we do need to be mindful of how far we go with change. I think this proposal is sympathetic to that. VC6, in terms of the nature of the area and the conservation impact, I would be definitely minded if this was to the front of the property. I'm very keen to keep the frontages of this area very, because it's a unique character down this area. So if it was a frontage that we're changing, I would be very different. But this is the rear lane, rear garden, rear garage. I'm not too concerned in terms of the changes there. And that is all my notes I have on this, but I will take in Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Convener. You've probably said a lot of what I would have said. I think there's been significant change to the rear of these lanes, with rear extensions of monstrous size, and a lot of paving over. And in this particular one, I think there is a big gain in terms of biodiversity, because what is at the moment a car park is going to be turned back into a garden. I think it's really encouraging to see some of these empty properties being repurposed into family homes again. The fact of life is people do have cars, and I think, as I always see these changes, we have to move with the times to a degree. And I'm with you completely, Convener, that if this was to the front of the property, I would be in a very different place. But I think the lanes and the fact they've actually reduced the pitch or the height of the garage to try and accommodate some of the concerns. I think the reinstatement of the wall, that's obviously got some horrible stuff on it at the moment. I appreciate that we're trying to retain as much of the character, but I don't think there's particularly a conservation feel or character to the rear lanes, and I think it would take decades and decades for that to ever, if ever, to come back. And I think we've to work with what we've got, and I think this will make a big improvement, actually. So I'd be supportive of the application. I haven't run through all the policies, but they're the same policies as you've already quoted, Convener, so I won't take up extra time by repeating them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howden.
I concur with the statement from yourself and from Councillor Bolton. I think the minded to approve based on what's been set out.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Clark.
It's likewise from myself. If it had been the front like yourselves, I would have just no, because that would take away the whole part of that street. But round the back, one side, there's a lot of garages. The side we're on, there is garages, but they're more longer because it's all been office space in the past. And I'm glad to see this one is actually turning back into a house, a family home at that. So I'm really happy to go ahead with this. I agree.
Thank you very much, members. Therefore, we are all in agreement to overturn the officer recommendations on this application. I'll take in Ms. Green to see if we have any conditions that we need to apply onto this one.
Yes, well, the landscaping plan has altered to accommodate the garage, so I'd suggest that we attach a condition to this one about the landscaping and also on the electric vehicle charging point, which is noted on the plans, so it would just be a condition that that was installed into this garage.
I see nodding heads all around, so we are all in agreement with that. Thank you very much, Miss Green and Mr. Masson and Miss Christie for today's attendance, as well as all members and those in the public. That brings us to the end of today's meeting. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.